You maybe have heard me talk a little bit about on-ramps. On-ramps. And on-ramps are for me the thought or the memory or the experience or the verse that has predictably or repetitively melted my heart, tenderized me, and taken me from just sheer head processing to my spirit being engaged. Now, most people probably don't recognize it when it happens, or they don't recognize the importance of it when it happens in their life. They probably have a tender moment with God, and it just passes on by. And they think, well, that's a one-off. No, but for you and I, those times are the hallmark events or moments that we want to take note of, journal it. Certainly establish it as being highly important in our minds, so that, why? Well, so that when I want my heart tenderized again, when I want to be tender, I don't want to be just heady and a brainiac. I don't want to just share sheer facts. What am I going to do? I'm going to call up the on-ramp. Call it up from back in the file cabinets, and those things that have been proven to touch my heart, I call those up and process them just briefly, and it's amazing. So I'm going to tell on somebody in this room, on this Zoom here today. So you got Ash Kirshner down there at the bottom of my screen. He's one of my spiritual sons. He's got two fathers in the best sense of the word. Well, he's got three fathers. Two earthly fathers, his own blood dad, and then me, one of his spiritual dads, and then he's got his heavenly father. But I'm very proud of Ashley. He's walked with the Lord 30 years now, almost, something like that, and just stayed on the wagon, and he's climbed some good mountains, and he's got some trophies to show for it. Anyway, here's one of my on-ramps. Ashley, I don't know if I've ever told you this. Golly, I'm going to go there before I get there. So here's my on-ramp, guys. I see myself at the great white throne, whenever that great day is. And we come up before Jesus, and he looks in his big logbook to see if your name's written there. And of course, all of our names are written there, and so we got no problem there. But then he says, come on in. Enter into the joy of the Lord, thou good and faithful servant. I hear that over myself. I really do. And this is the part that's my own special making. I said, but Jesus, can you hold on just a second? Could I introduce you to and give a claim to those who you've helped me bring with me into the heavenly places? And right behind me is Ashley Kirshner. Now, one of these days he might be in front of me, but he's going to have to run some to get into that position. But anyway, but I have this moment of just being so grateful to Jesus for the grace that he gave for me to impart to others, and to name one person that's on my list. It's Ash Kirshner. And Jesus, thank you that you allowed me to speak into his life and bring him with me and present him also before you. Well, you can see it messes me up. It did today, and it does almost every time I go. I get serious about processing that little daydream. That is an on-ramp for me. And in my Bible, I have a little 3x5 card. And on that card, I have 12 or 13 on-ramps. Now, I have a lot more of those now, but that's been in my Bible for about 20 years. Many, many, many times when I'm out on the road, you're running hard and schedules and people, and you're trying to be on 10. And now I've got to step up before the people, and I want to move with the Spirit of God. Oh, gosh. This is so precious to me because it brings me not only into oneness with him, but it allows him to flow through me better. And so I'll just say time out to the world. And I'll step out into some closet behind the stage, or if it's in the afternoon, I'll kind of go walk and see if I can find a lone place in a park. And sometimes I do bring my 3x5 card, and other times it's already in my head. And I'm just out walking with the Lord, and I say, Jesus, could I just share with you one of these stories? I don't know if you remember this story, Jesus. Could I just share with you this story? And it's either a Bible verse or an experience that I had that, like I said, when I revisit it repetitively, almost guaranteed, it will bring my heart into a place of tenderness. Those on-ramps are invaluable. I tell people that 3x5 piece of paper is worth more than $1 million to me. It may not be worth 2 cents to you, but it's worth more than $1 million to me because it helps my spirit man be engaged with the Spirit of God. It helps to still my brain. It helps my heart and spirit to be called up to the front and begin to operate from that level. So there you go. I haven't shared that quite on that level before, so you get to hear some of my secrets. You guys, we are going to become the craziest bunch of mush buckets. It's going to be the most wonderful thing ever. So here's my Bible, and there's my little 3x5. Carried that in my Bible for probably nearly 20 years. Yeah, may the Lord give us many, many on-ramps. Make it easy. You know, eventually, as we're saying, the frequency of activation helps create the, maybe could I say, faith muscle memory, and we just more easily engage each time. We use something from the past as our doorway or pathway or connecting point. And let me call up a verse. This is Deuteronomy 29:29. You've heard me say this quite a few times, but the things that are hidden belong to God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever. And so, first of all, it touches my heart that he reveals things to us. I quoted Psalm 25, the secrets of the Lord are with those who fear him. So he reveals things to us, and then, as you say, Claudia, they're sitting on the shelves around us. When would you like to pull that off to activate into that? Use that as maybe our reconnect point again. And then not only is it ours forever, but as we hone it, as we develop it, as we hand it off to our generations, it belongs to us and our children forever. Just think of it, guys and gals. We create a dynasty of heavenly people who know how to live in the spirit realm. Oh, that just touches me pretty deeply. I don't know why exactly, except I think it's our inheritance, it's our Father's wishes, and it's his where he's going to give us grace as we lean into it with him. So engaging, whether we're using in you we live and move and have our being, whether we're using that for our own self, which is primarily where it has to become a reality before we can give it away. Because we can't give away what we don't own. We can speak of concepts, but it's difficult, if not impossible, to impart what we don't own. And so, first of all, it is important for us to learn the dynamics of what we're talking about today for our own sakes. But most of us here, I believe, are ministers in one level or another, where we have people that we are giving away from ourselves to them. And that's where the next level of priority or importance is on this dynamic of living moving, having our being in and from our spirit man. In the Spirit of God, but in and from our spirit man. Just a quick recap. Brain waves beget brain waves. Knowledge begets knowledge. In our soul, attitudes, emotions, we share with emotional, fervor or charge in our words, and that begets something of the same thing in the other person. But you and I are people of the heavenlies, men and women of heaven. And so our greatest contribution, our greatest commerce, our greatest commodity that we have to give is the spirit realm commodity. It's the substance in and from our spirit man, and we become, as it were, a conduit from the Spirit of God through our spirit to them. And that's where it becomes very important for us to learn how to engage with our spirit, as opposed to just going through the forms or modes of religion. Scripture talks about having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. And so there is the possibility, which I think much of Christianity walks in, of just having forms and rituals. We have words. There's a psalm, it's not a great psalm. God says, and you praise me or worship me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. So we have forms and rituals, but we haven't engaged the spirit man. Okay, so the next level of not only activating this and walking in it with skill for ourselves, but then in the giving away process. So, as I said many times over the years, whether it's on home base in Kansas City or whether it's in another country, it's like, okay, God, we have this appointment coming up in the next couple of hours. What would you have? So, stilling my mind is a really big aspect to being able to engage my spirit man. I have to tell my mind to be quiet. Now, I don't know about you. We're just going to pick this apart a little bit here. I don't know about you, but I almost have a physical sensation when my brain finally lets go and gives up, says uncle. When my brain finally says, okay, I'll be quiet. Because you know how it is, like right now I'm telling my brain be quiet, but I'm thinking about how to say it to be quiet. And somewhere there has to come a point where that becomes a reality. And again, I don't know if it's true for you, but I almost have, and actually I would say I do have a physical sensation where my brain actually relaxes. Now, if that's true, and if that bears witness or relevance to you or with you, I would encourage you to analyze and recognize that feeling. What is it? What is that feeling? What does it feel like? So that I could recognize when I'm in the mode or when I'm in the brain. Now, I'm not saying the brain's bad, because the brain works for us very well for most of the natural temporal aspects of life. We've got to have our brain, so thank God for our brain. But when you and I are wanting to transfer commodity in the spirit realm and from the spirit realm, then I want to know, am I in the right posture? Have I cultivated the right interior environment, the environment inside of me? Have I cultivated that? Have I flicked the switches and turned off this and turned off that so that my brain is not now dictating, but rather there is some open space for my spirit man to begin to talk? Oh boy. It's just so cool. I'm just so grateful to the Lord. for how he helps us to develop our spiritual muscles, And just me putting my hands on my belly right there and talking about stilling my mind and going to my spirit man, it's just the flow just automatically starts. So I'm just wanting to highlight that to us, to establish if I've really got, well, let me say a word. Bob Jones always called the thing between our ears, our mind, he called it the beast. You got to still the beast. And so cultivate an awareness of what that feels like to you, so that when it happens, here's what happens for me. When I have that feeling in my mind relaxing, going to rest, then my faith rises to expect my spirit man to come to the front. You catch that? Let me just say that one more time, because that's kind of nuts and bolts stuff. When I go to my brain and I say, brain, you've got to be quiet now. I can't live by brainiac mode right now. And so brain, you've got to be quiet. So I'm assessing, is my brain quiet? No, I got thoughts over here, thoughts over there. No, I told you, brain, you've got to be quiet. And when I can finally come to that place, there is a physical sensation of it going to rest. Kind of like, oh. And it's almost like a sigh comes out of my mouth. I don't know if that has to happen, but there's kind of a, okay, come to rest. And once that happens, when I have the verification that my brain has come to that restful place, then a faith begins to rise from my spirit man, that my spirit man can now come to the forefront and begin to lead me, begin to talk to me. Well, I'd like to just pull up a few more of my on-ramps then, and we'll maybe do an activation then after that. But so this is on my 3x5. One of my activations is the Simeon passage. The old gentleman Simeon, who had labored long and hard in intercession, laboring over the messianic prophecies in Isaiah and various other passages he only had the Old Testament in those days, but he'd labored over that, calling forth the Messiah. When will it be? And he's contending for it. And one day God gave him a promise, and he said, you will get to see it with your own eyes. Well, now, that's a pretty good promise. That's a big installment towards completion of this yearning in his heart. And in order to get on page with this, maybe consider your yearnings. What things have you longed for? Healthy, wonderful God things that you've just said, God, I must have this. I must appropriate. I must apprehend this. And you've contended with God for. So those yearnings, think of that. What we're wanting to do now is to get in the saddle with Simeon. Now God comes and he says, I'm going to let you see the fulfillment of your prayers and your intercession. I'm going to let you see it with your own eyes. I bet that was a good day for Simeon. But it wasn't the best day. Because why? He hadn't seen it yet. He hadn't seen the fulfillment. He had promise. I bet you faith rose in his heart. Faith comes by hearing. So now Simeon had heard. So now he has a faith. Faith is the substance of the things I've hoped for, but I haven't quite seen it. He was in that in-between time period. So now one day he's in the temple, and walks this newlyweds, and they've got this little 8-day-old baby. Just like any other young couple walks in there with their babies. Just like any other day throughout his long life of however long he was the priest. There he was, and he's waiting, he sees, they come in, and instantly, in a moment, he holds this little baby in his arms, in his hands, probably, about this big, just picking up his little bottom in this hand and his little head here, and instantly it wasn't a baby anymore. It wasn't just flesh and blood. It wasn't just a newlywed couple with their first baby. Instantly, all that he had ever contended for was fulfilled in his very arms in front of him. And that's when he said, "Now my eyes have beheld the consolation of Israel." The thing that he contended for was finally now at hand. I don't know why that messes me up. But maybe it's just because you and I and all of us have wonderful things that we have contended for in God. And the contending, the length of time that it takes for the maturation of that yearning to come to fruitfulness, works a real, well, it's hard in the process, but it works a wonderful thing in the end. The appreciation for it in the end is worth more than gold. And so if I want a tender heart, I just bring my contendings in along with Simeon's contending. And I walk that little journey with Simeon from reading the Messianic prophecies. His heart was prompted. Contend for this. Oh yes, now it's not just contending, now it's yearning, longing. So I bring my heart in along with Simeon's process. And then when he comes to the final fulfillment, gets to see that little baby. And it's much more than just a baby now. And it's more than just even the fulfillment of his yearnings. It is now the fulfillment of the will of God. Not just for himself, but for all of Israel and all of us. And Simeon, I think, somehow got to tap into some of that. Well, that's just one of these 13 on-ramps on this page. And so if I want my heart tender, I sneak away. I get away, steal away literally in a closet or back behind stage or go to my bedroom. Jesus, could I just recount this story to you? Do you mind if I remind you? As if he forgot. And oh, it does my heart so good. And when my heart's tender, oh, I flow so much better. Oh, God is good. Well, maybe I'll tell you one more. You want to hear one more? This is Song of Solomon, chapter 3. And the beloved has asked her to come with him, and she had resisted, and she got herself all snugly in bed, and she was not ready to roll out. She was safe and tidy for the night. And but he left. He walked on. He went on down the road. Something bothered her. How many times have you had dry times in your life? I've had a few. A lot. And so she had a dry time. She had a realization. He's not here. He was here, but he's not here. Now that's not true for us in the absolute sense, so I'm not painting that picture. What I'm trying to do is create a dynamic in order to tenderize my heart when I'm dry. He was here. I heard him. I didn't respond well. But now I want him. And I'm going to go on a search for him. How many searches have you and I've done? Well, let me get the Psalms out. I'll just start here. I'll read one of the Psalms and see if anything jumps out at me. See if anything sparks, Oh, I'll listen to this CD or this podcast or this YouTube video. I'll see if something happens. We've all done it. I know I've done it thousands of times. And so many times I go to this passage in Song of Solomon 3, and it says, by night on my bed I sought him. I sought the one I love. And I went through the city, and I said in the streets and in the squares, I'm looking for the one I love. But I couldn't find him. And I asked the city watchman, have you seen him? Tell me, have you seen him? Where can I find him? And they couldn't help her. Interesting thing is that in some ways other people can help us, but there is a very real dynamic that we've got to put the rubber to the road on the internal areas. It's got to be our own personal quest. There's just something about that. I don't know. It doesn't seem quite right, but it yields great gold. Anyway, have you seen the one I love? And in verse 4, this is the verse. And scarcely had I passed them when I found the one I love, and I held on to him and would not let him go. Again, it's the fulfillment of desire that's been activated, desire that's been earnest. It's been yearning that has gripped you. It's like Jesus, it was said of Jesus that the zeal of his Father's house has consumed him. When you want something so bad, you almost taste it and you can't quite get it, but when you do, oh, it just has the most wonderful, satisfying reward. I'm reminded of Duncan Campbell, who was the man who helped to spark the Hebrides revival. And there were two old maids, I understand, who were the intercessors who helped bring it to pass. And he just was the young guy who was the spark in the tinder. And but anyway, in older days of his life, somebody came around to interview. The revival was long gone, and they would just get together and they would tell stories of the days, of the good days, you know, the presence of the Lord. And this interviewer came to this gathering of older folks who were reminiscing, and he said, "Tell me some stories." And I've heard the actual recording of Duncan Campbell say this. He says, "Young man," let me see if I can read it here. "When you find him, don't ever let him go." Oh, that phrase is pregnant. That phrase is so power-packed. It's so life-engaging. If we'll let it, it'll just permeate all of our being, and it'll compel us and propel us in and through, I should say, through the dry times and into discovery. So those are just two or three of my on-ramps that, like I said, I use those when I'm either dry personally, or I want to step into the spirit-man engaged ability to flow and function when I'm giving away. So hopefully that's inspired us all a little bit. Thank you for letting it inspire me again. You made me a mess again.